A lot of times I'm asked that what is this maths of Clat? Well, let me tell you that as far as Clat is concerned, the maths is extremely basic. And anybody who has done class 6th, 7th and 8th maths, for them this maths is not going to be a difficult task at all. You do not have to look at 9th and 10th at all. What are we looking at here? We are looking at basics of percentages, profit and loss, time, speed, distance, ratio and proportion, time and work at best. So these are the topics which you have essentially done in class 6, 7th and 8th. So if you have a maths phobia, right, the first thing that you do is you pick up your class 6, 7th and 8th book and start spending about half an hour to 45 minutes every day and look at improvising your technique. For instance, if I ask you that if A has grown from 120 to 150. Now, there are a couple of ways of looking at this question. One is that we do normal growth, which is from 120 to 150 is 30. Then is the growth rate concept. And typically I have seen students solving, final minus initial upon initial into 100. That's 150 minus 120 upon 120 to 100. Well, yes, that's right. But there's a donkey work that's happening here. What we do in questions like this, we simplify it and convert it into the smallest numbers possible. So we take ratios concept here, and that's where your ratio and proportion topic helps you. 120 becomes a 150, which means a 12 becomes a 15, which means a 4 becomes a 5, right? And therefore, the growth is of 1. And what is the growth on? The growth is on 4. So 1 upon 4 is a 25%. So you try and make the numbers much more manageable. Now suppose I say that A sells to B and B sells to C. A sells to B at a profit of 25%. B sells to C at a profit of 40%. Now what do we do here? Should we just use numbers like that we are taught in school, where percentage increase is, 1 plus R by 100 and so on and so forth? Or better, we use multiplying factors. So if we learn the concept of multiplying factors, this becomes an extremely easy question to solve. So if something has grown by, let's say, a 25%, A to B, then that's a multiplying factor of 5 by 4, right? And similarly, if B is selling it to C at, let's say, a 20% markup, then it's a multiplying factor of 6 by 5. And let's say C sells it to D at 40%, then it's again a multiplying factor of 7 by 5. So we are just making a numbers convenient, and then we do cross multiplication. So let's say the cost price of A was 800 and he sells it at a markup of 25%, 20% and then 40%. We are just doing a 800 into a 5 by 4 into a 6 by 5 and into a 7 by 5, and we are getting the values without complicating any further. So this is one bit of it, that your calculations have to be really quick. This is not a question on integration, calculus or vector algebra. This is basic numbers that you have to be dealing with. So A, you have to be very comfortable with ratios from 1 by 2 till 1 upon 30. Second, your multiplication has to be completely hands-on. And second thing, if you look at data interpretation, you have pie charts, you have histograms, you have bar charts, you have tables, right? But you also have caselets. So get into the habit of solving a couple of DI sets 5 days a week, interpret those sets, understand how you can shorten the calculation. So first thing first, understand the set. That's almost 95% of battle won. And then you work fast as far as your calculation is concerned. So smart work, hard work has to be consistent. That's when you're going to improve in DI. Also, I would like to tell you that when you're attempting the data interpretation section, you're giving it some time in the end. At least keep 15 minutes for the data interpretation section. At least start solving a single step. And it's important that you are able to decide upon which set is easier. So let's start with getting 4 or 5 marks in the DI section, and slowly you can start attempting the second set, right? Ideally speaking, in the Clat paper, your DI section should not take more than 10 minutes. So that's the speed that one is expecting. So what you can also do is at times just play around. You can keep your DI section as a second or the third section rather than the last section, right? So that when you have your brain working, you are able to perform and get some confidence going. All right. Thank you very much.